Hello there, it's Jaymz Bee. Welcome to my podcast. I've done a few of these now, and if you want to see all of them, go to jaymzbee.ca. You can click on podcasts, and you'll see the whole slew of people that have been through here. Sometimes I go to their homes. Sometimes I go to Barbarian Steakhouse, one of my sponsors. Thank you, Barbarian Steakhouse, 7 Elm Street. You know, I'm going there later today, and I don't even have a business meeting. Sometimes I just want to go. The food is amazing, and it's 7 Elm Street, steps away from Young Dundas Square. So sometimes I'm here. Sometimes I'm there. Sometimes I go to people's homes. But right now, we're going to talk to somebody. We're going outside for this. It's fake outside. It's green screen outside. I'm going to be talking to a very famous drummer. I'll tell you about him in just a moment. But first, I want to thank my sponsors, barberfinancial.ca. Now, Captain Paul has, what has he got? 200 CPA clients, dozens of corporate clients. He can help anybody. And barberfinancial.ca or .com, you'll talk to Captain Paul, and if you have any financial concerns, he can look after you. 46 years of uninterrupted business. Okay, so there's that. There's Barbarians, and of course, Patreon. Thank you, Patreon. Hard to make a living these days as an independent artist running around trying to promote people and do things. If you got $5 a month and you want to help me on this noble mission to get you into a club, or everybody out to a club, I think going to a play, going to the ballet, going to concerts, it's good for the spirit. And sometimes, even if times are tough, spend that extra buck, see something good, your spirits will be lifted. So thanks to all my sponsors. Now I'm interviewing a guy who's probably one of the very first drummer, singer, songwriters. It's not Ringo Starr, Levon Helm, not Levon Helm, but he was before Don Henley, Peter Criss, Roger Taylor, and he was in a band called Moby Grape. Now, Moby Grape, for some of you, you might be too young to remember, they had a couple of hits. I had a favorite song called 805, and really kind of folky and psychedelic. Everyone in the band sang and wrote songs, and I'm going to talk to this great drummer and singer-songwriter who's at Hughes Room on the 24th of this month. Okay, so I'll get to him, but first, listings. Party alert! I had to get ready for that. I have the biggest party of my career, probably. I do a week of birthdays in the middle of April every year, and usually I try to turn my birthday party events, different forms of music, different types of clubs, but I try to do as much as I can for charity because I feel so lucky to live in Canada, to be in Toronto, and I want to give back. So I've got 20 bands in 10 rooms at Old Mill, Toronto on Monday, April 15th. Information, unisonfund.ca, and the reason that you go there is because all the money is going to Unison. I have some remarkable sponsors and friends who have kicked in some money, so the bands get paid and the production is put up, but all the money from the door goes directly to Unison Fund, and I love this organization. They help people in the music community who really need help. It's an emergency service, and it's helped a lot of people I know. So I love this organization, and it's a cool thing to do. It's $40 to get a passport, run through all the rooms of the Old Mill, seeing all different bands. Stick around for a while or just catch a song or two and see all the bands you can. When your passport is fully stamped, you enter it into a great prize draw, or don't. I mean, it's really about seeing the music, but we do have some prizes. Also, Unison have set up a gala dinner, so $40 to see 20 bands in 10 rooms, $200 to see all of that and have a special dinner with Tom Cochran and friends from 6 to 8. So all the information at unisonfund.ca, biggest thing ever. Please tell your friends, share this. Let's fill that room, raise lots of money for a good charity, and you will see every kind of music in every different room. All the bands have been booked, so you can get that information on my site at jaymzbee.ca. Just click on events. Now, Old Mill, Toronto. What's happening now? Tonight, William Karn is there, and coming up this week, Bob DeAngelis, Pat Murray, and a whole bunch more. The Homesmith Bar is this cozy little room. It's about 60 people. It always is a $20 minimum and no cover, and it's from 7:30 to 10:30. Sometimes Tuesdays, sometimes Wednesdays, pretty much always Thursday, Friday, Saturday. But just check the website for what's happening. Lula.ca tonight at Son de Santiago, and that's 7:30. Doors at 6:30. Have dinner. Then there's lots of Cuban music. That's a small combo. And then later, Yanni Burrell, DJ Suave. It's a party all night long. Same with tomorrow, Saturdays, Salsa Saturdays. Drag brunch on Sunday once again. Drag queens and brunch. That's brilliant. And then an 8-piece band. I don't know why they don't have any band members listed, but the Best of R&B Soul Party is happening this Thursday. So you can get all the information at lula.ca, and I love the people at Lula. Amazing sound, ambience, food, and service. It's all there. The Rex Hotel, they feature 20 groups between now and next Friday, so I'll just mention a few you can see. Jerome Godbout, a great blues singer and harmonica player, love that guy. Paul DeLong, the drummer. Montuno Police, amazing records, played them for years. Beverly Taft, a sweet girl with a sweet old-timey voice, you'll love her. And Brigham Phillips Big Band. Brigham Phillips is just a card. I wish I could tour with that guy. I've never actually toured with him, but he is funny, he's talented, he's charming, he plays piano and trumpet like nobody's business. So check out all these acts over at the Rex, and just look at their site for the other 17 shows. Jazz Bistro tonight, it's Steve Coven Trio. He's there tomorrow night too. A fantastic piano player, unbelievably emotive. He can play something so soft, and then something really party-like. He travels around the world. You can hear it in his music. His band are super tight, and he's a showman. At some point, he'll get inside the piano. It's really fun. So, a news flash, by the way. Colin Hunter is there Thursday, Friday, Saturday. You can go see Colin Hunter at Jazz Bistro. But April 13th, my actual birthday, Saturday night, Colin Hunter and the Anthony Terpstra Big Band are playing at Palais Royale. The last time I did a party like this, 500 people showed up, swing dancing, jumping around, drinking, having fun. Palais Royale, they put about $2 million into renovating it, and it looks so good. This is where Duke Ellington, Fletcher Henderson, everybody played there, and you can be dancing on that old-fashioned floor. Tickets are $40. All the money from the door goes to Jazz FM 91. Don't know if you've heard this, but it's going really well over there. They have a new board of directors. They do need money to pick things up and keep running, but everybody's very excited. And Colin Hunter has said, I'm going to donate the big band. I'm going to help donate the room. It's like everybody's on board for Jazz FM. So $40 ticket, come on in, dance your face off, or just sit back and watch all the dancers and enjoy big band music. June Garber, Alex Pangman, Sam Broverman, they're all going to be guests of Colin Hunter, and it's going to be an amazing show. So information and tickets, palaisroyale.ca. Okay, and now, Hugh's Room. Last thing, then we're going to get to our interview. Sweet Baby James. Remember that? That corny joke from last week when I showed a picture of me and then I said it's not me and then I showed a picture of James Taylor? Yeah, okay. So that's happening tonight. It might be sold out. Whenever a man called Rycraft does a big show, it sells out in advance. So please call in advance. Make sure that, or write to them, make sure you can get tickets. But no matter what, there's other things coming up. Paul Reddick is performing this Thursday. It's called An Evening for Jack. Jack was a fan of Paul's who passed away. It's a benefit, and Reddick was one of my favorite blues singer-songwriters. A lot of it's kind of pop-like. It's just so good and so catchy and so heartfelt. So you're going to have some amazing music and some goosebumps on Thursday at Hugh's Room. And Friday, a week from now, Stephen Fearing is taking to the stage. Now, I know him from Blackie and the Rodeo Kings. Big fan of his solo work. I always thought he was from Ireland, but I found out he was born here, raised in Ireland, and then came back here. The things you learn from the internet. He's a great guy, and it should be really fun there to just see him doing his own stuff, and that's happening a week Friday. Now, I should mention that a week from this Sunday, Don Stevenson is presenting the music of Moby Grape. So he's the guy I told you about earlier, fantastic drummer, really nice guy too, and he's living in Toronto after being in California and all over the place. So he's going to be my guest in just a few minutes. Before I go, JaymzBee.ca, you can reach me there, sign up for my newsletter, and patreon.com if you can support this in any way. Yay! Okay, here we go. I'm going to get ready now. Going out to see Don Stevenson. So, Don Stevenson, how long have you been in Toronto?
About 5 years.
And what brought you here?
Well, it's interesting. Well, like basically, it's our grandkids are out here. So our daughter's out here, and we've got Alexandra and 3 kids, and they're all like 7 and 5 and 3. And how can you miss that, right?
Right.
This is true. Last night, our 5-year-old granddaughter, she lost a tooth. So she's putting a little note together with her mom to the tooth fairy. This is so cute. It's like couldn't even happen, but it did. So she's writing a little letter to the tooth fairy, and she looks at her mom and says, "You know what, Mom? I think it's you." And Alexandra goes, "Well, what do you mean? It can't be me." She says, "I think you're hiding your wings." Can you believe that? So that's why we came out.
You want to live like that?
Yeah. My wife and I, particularly my wife, is over there all the time.
What was your life like in the U.S. before you got here? What were you doing? Where were you based, and what were you doing before you got here?
I was up in Whistler, British Columbia.
Wow.
Yeah. I was the director of sales for a high-end vacation club.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I skied in the winter and played golf in the summer and played music all the time.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Now, I understand your first band was called The Frantics.
Yep.
Now, The Frantics are a famous sketch comedy group from Canada. A whole bunch, Dan Redican and the guys, they're really, really funny, but they're not around anymore, but they were around for a little while, and that's a comedy troupe. Yours was it more psychedelic or pop?
No, it was, I came out of like the B3 Hammond organ trio background.
Oh, so that was the Frantics.
No, it wasn't the Frantics, it was prior to that. I played a lot up in Seattle. It was interesting, like at that period of time, and maybe it was the same in Toronto, but when I was a young man, I could play 6 nights a week at one bar, and we would play at the same bar for 3 months, and we'd fill it every single night.
Right.
So you could make enough money to pay your bills and to lose money to the owner of the club when you played Yahtzee on Friday and pay for your bill.
Yeah.
But that was a B3 Hammond organ trio type of existence. And I would go down to the Black and Tan, which is an after hours club in Seattle, and we'd play with Mike Mandel and Larry Coryell, and Jimmy McGriff would come in, and we'd back Etta James, and that was like the most amazing school ground. And then the drummer for the Frantics got in a car accident, and it's really strange. I actually went to his house. John Keelior and I are friends, and his mom was a psychic, and she puts her hand on the television screen, and she was going, Don, I can see you on the television. I can see you in the future. There's something going to happen to you musically that's amazing. And about 3 months later, her son got into a car accident and couldn't play drums with the Frantics. The Frantics asked me if I would come and play with them, and they had a B3 Hammond organ and Jerry Miller and Bob Hosko, and they were a great band.
Yeah.
And they paid me a lot.
Bob Hosko was the guitarist?
No, Bob Hosko was the sax player. And
okay.
Jerry Miller ended up being the guitar player with Moby Grape, and he still gets up in the morning. Forgive me, but he smokes a big fatty, eats some French bread and plays guitar. So I went.
It keeps you young.
Yeah. So that was my incarnation into the Frantics, the band, and we played down at the Top Hat for the Carlo Collis, a connected family, and we played it in Tacoma at the Top Hat for probably 3 or 4 months before we got invited down to San Francisco, and that's how we ended up down in San Francisco.
Right. Now, I want to go back because you said 2 names that, one is everybody wants to know about Etta James.
Yep.
What it was like playing with her.
Well, Etta James, she would come in and she'd give you a set list, and then we would go practice the set list, and then she would come in, and the players were really, really great players, Mike Mandel and Larry Coryell, and we had Adam Parker, no, it was Steve Parker. Anyway, there was really nice players. So she would come in, she was so cool, we'd do a little rehearsal, she'd go through her stuff, and she'd just knock you out. She would be on right after a dancer that had a snake around her and tassels that were lit on fire. It was like...
Because you're talking late 60s, early 70s?
Yeah, talking mid-60s, and it was a black nightclub, primarily, the Black and Tan. So we'd play at Birdland in the Black and Tan, and we were the white guys that were okay.
Well, Larry Coryell was a very good friend of mine. I miss him so much. I would book him. He would come up here every year or two. He was my brother. I mean, we even had the same hair and the little goatee. We got along so well. What was it like? He would have been very young back then, but I'm sure he was already a virtuoso.
He was a monster. He played with the Dynamics, which was another big band in Seattle. And he would come in and play down at the Black and Tan with us. And he was just a monster. He was like a lovely man, a beautiful player. I met him originally in Spokane, over in Richmond, when he lived over there. We came over, there was a battle of the bands. My high school band went over to back up Paul Anka. And there was all kinds of high school bands that were there in the big battle of the bands. And I stayed at Larry Coryell's house.
Wow.
And it was just, he had a bunk bed, and I stayed up in the top bunk, and he was in the bottom bunk. We got up, had breakfast, went to the concert, and Paul Anka, you know, Paul Anka's record got stuck. He couldn't, all of these kids that were supposed to back him up, we just really didn't read charts. And so he would come in and try to set everything up for his hits, and there wasn't enough time to go through it all. So he was pantomiming it, and interestingly enough, in the Spokane arena, he was going, he missed the part where it was,
Wait, you mean he was doing playback?
He was doing playback of Diana, and the record got stuck. So
how was he backstage?
He pulled it out.
But how was he backstage?
I don't know. I'm not going to talk about it.
The reputation precedes. I've heard from many musicians over the years. Yeah. Now, Buddy Rich, another great drummer. People also had horror stories about how he treated his band, but actually band members said the few people he turned on deserved it. That there were people that were not rehearsing, they were showing up late or drunk or not pulling their weight. Do you have any stories like that of people that... everyone loves a good nightmare gig, a Spinal Tap story.
Right. Well, I think Spinal Tap was... they must have done... I think we were part of the influence in that movie. But, yeah, there was times when you were playing with people that didn't show up or didn't act right. But by and large, the musicians that I played with all my life, I've been blessed enough to have guys who are really responsible and some characters. L.V. Parr, he was a big black guy, man. He could play guitar. He'd play behind his head, you know, and do all those little tricks. And we were playing at the Roll-In, which is now, interestingly enough, a parking lot. But we would play there, and LV I would be out in the audience, you know, during the breaks, and trying to kind of make some friends with some girls. You know, I'd be out there, having a drink and talking to the ladies, and LV would say, he'd get on the mic, go, "Excuse me." He said, "Don, I just got a phone call from your wife, and she wants you to bring home some baby food." So that's not exactly acting up the same way as like not showing up and doing right, but there was some pretty funny stuff.
Yeah, it's still pretty funny. Now, you were, the Frantics kind of were the seeds for the Grape that followed, right? Moby Grape. Now, that is a band that a lot of even young people still remember that band because you put out so many records in such a short period of time.
Yeah,
what was that deal with Columbia? I think it was 4 albums in two years or something?
Yeah, it was. Columbia actually was a big bidding war. We were all down at the Ark down in Sausalito. We were at the Ark with the Buffalo Springfield and Janis Joplin and Big Brother and the Holding Company and Lee Michaels, and nobody had heard of any of us. It was an after-hours club where people would come over from the Avalon and the Fillmore, and there was buzzing around there with all of these A&R guys from all these different companies. And finally, we decided to go with Columbia, and Columbia they really, really promoted us. They wanted us to be the next Beatles. They thought these guys this is the band we love. This band. David Rubinson was our producer, and he was an adult and he knew music, and so. Some A&R guy got the idea. He runs into a meeting back there in New York, and he goes, "Hey, I got an idea. This is going to be the best thing you ever saw in your life. What we're going to do with this band is we're going to put out 5 singles at the same time." Can you believe that? He says, "We're going to promote these guys like nobody's ever been promoted. It's going to be the biggest thing in the world." Turned out to be nobody's ever done that again, because it turned out, as you must know as a disc jockey and as somebody who understands music, they couldn't figure out which records to play. They couldn't figure out if they should play Fall on You or 805 or Hey Grandma or Scene, or they didn't know what to play. And so it just turned into, our reputation turned out to be kind of like a hype band. And so that kind of like did us in a way along with our behavior.
Now, when you started that band, I assume it was just organic that everybody sang that. The reason why they might say Beatles, or I'd say later XTC, there are very few bands where there's more than one singer, let alone everybody.
Right.
Some beautiful harmonies, and then also some different front vocals. Was that intentional, or did that just happen?
It just happened. Matthew Case, who, if you look up Evil Manager in the book of Evil Managers, that would be his picture right there. But he certainly could tell talent, and he had taken Skip Spence from the Jefferson Airplane because Skip was dynamic, and he said, "Look, we're going to form another band," and he's up in San Francisco, and so he held open auditions, and Peter Lewis, who is Loretta Young's son, and a wonderful finger picker and a very sensitive songwriter, he was one of the people that were invited up. And Peter knew Bob Mosley, and Bob Mosley had played with the Frantics in San Francisco. We had him for about 3 months in San Francisco. We went out and saw him at, I think it was at the San Francisco airport with Joni Lyman and Joel Scott Hill and Johnny Barbada, and they had a great, great band. And so Bob Mosley looked like God. He was a handsome surfer dude, and he sang like Otis Redding. And so their band was just breaking up, fortunately, at that time, and we said, "Hey, come and play with us, man." So he came and played with us, and he was just a stud. And so, and then one night at the Go-Go in San Francisco, he clubbed a guy with his axe, man, who was pushing up on the stage and, saying he wanted to hear, what was it, Long Tall Texan, and was being obnoxious, and Bob just went, boom, man, I just went right into it and said, "Back off, dude." So
that was a thing. That was a thing back then, because I've actually seen footage just recently of Keith Richards whacking a guy and going right back to playing.
Didn't miss a note. Didn't miss a note.
Unbelievable.
So we all got together through those kind of circumstances and ended up auditioning up in San Francisco, and we were all playing together. And we played all of our favorite rock and roll songs together. It's just stuff that we knew in common and people that we admired, and it was so good, And so Jerry and I are getting in a car and driving back down to Redwood City, and at that time they said, "What do you think, guys?" When the music was over, and Jerry and I said, "Well, I don't know, man. We don't know. Whatever. It sounded good, We get in the car and go, "Oh God, did you hear that, man? It's so great." So we were just flipping out. Yeah. And when we got together to rehearse, they said, "Would you guys like the gig?" We said, "Yeah, we'll take the gig." And when we got together to rehearse, that's when we found out that everybody, not just Bob and not just myself, but Peter and Skip and Jerry, we all sang and we all wrote.
And you had beautiful harmonies that were very trippy. And you were probably one of the very first that I can think of, a drummer who really sang. I mean, no offense to Ringo Starr, but you were a drummer who really sang. And then after that, the Eagles, and after that, the Stampeders here in Canada, the band. Yeah. But that all came a little bit later, didn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's still kind of a rare breed, but I didn't think anything of it because I've always sang and played drums,
written songs.
And written songs.
Yeah. Now, was 805 your song?
805 was just my song that Jerry and I wrote.
Yeah.
We were driving down from Seattle to San Francisco because it was like people who want to be movie stars, they went to Hollywood, and people who want to be artists and go to New York, and people who wanted to play music went to San Francisco. So we're on our way, left our families behind, left all our stuff behind, and just headed down there in a big old Rocket 88 Oldsmobile, crossing over the Golden Gate Bridge, and Jerry looks at me and goes, "What time is it, man?" And I went, "It's 8:05. And he goes, "Well, I guess we're leaving here soon, man. That sounds like a song." So we kind of wrote it, and it was about our ladies we left behind, and 805 was some nice harmonies.
Murder in My Heart for the Judge.
Yeah.
That might be my favorite right now. 805 was the one, as soon as I heard you were in town, I'm like, oh, 805, I know that guy. But this Murder in My Heart for the Judge, what an interesting song. Where did that come from?
Well, I can tell you, Paul Manafort isn't singing that song. It was just a silly thing. I got busted for no license and out of, and my license plate was out of, it wasn't up to date, and I didn't have my driver's license with me, and I don't think I had anything. I was just like stoner. So the guy gave me a very serious ticket and told me to come into court. So I went into the courtroom, and prior to my hearing, there was a lovely lovely young lady, and she had a very similar, charge as mine. And the judge just kind of said, well, get your license straight, get your license plate straight, get it all done, and I'm going to fine you $50, and I want to see evidence that all of this is, and so that was great. So then he called me, and he gave me a $350 fine, a suspended sentence, and I had to have everything done and take it back and show it to him and do all of that. So I went, that gives me a little bit of a inspiration for a song. So I wrote Murder in My Heart for the judge.
for a traffic ticket instead of an actual, it sounded like you were up for murder charges yourself or something.
I kind of I puffed it up a bit, but Jerry and I wrote that song together, but that was the incident.
And Hey Grandma, all of these songs I mentioned, they all sound so different. They're all, one would be almost more of a country rock, and then one another is a psychedelic rock, and one is almost folky.
Well, you know what? That was one of the things that was interesting. I mean, Jerry and I, like I said, we came from this club scene, so we were 3-minute, 11-second guys, and we had it all kind of nailed. Bob was like a blues surfer guy, and Peter was a folk guy, and Skip was just mystical. And so when you put all of this together, you ended up with not one genre or one kind of sound. You ended up with everybody's contribution, and those contributions all turned out to be a little bit different. Hey Grandma was, the ladies at that time wore granny dresses. They were dresses that came all the way down. Interestingly enough, they were very curvy and very beautiful and very free.
But it was Little House on the Prairie dresses with a surprise package.
Yes, it was very provocative and beautiful, and patchouli oil and all this lovely stuff. So we wrote Hey Grandma because they were wearing these granny dresses. So that's how that happened.
I love it. So Matthew Katz, okay, just to some bad business here. You have a manager who charms you.
Yep.
Has some connections, has some stuff. When did you first get the inkling things were going south and maybe he wasn't looking after your best interests?
Well, we signed all the paperwork when we were on at the Ark, and Jerry didn't want to sign it. I mean, he was probably smarter than the rest of us. But Matthew, as you say, it was a bit of a, look, I've got these things going on with Columbia. We're going to be able to put something together with them. I put you guys together, and I got your best interests at heart. I'm going to do this and put it together, and we're going to be able to, make a really an impact musically. This is our fate, and it's going to be great, and I'm going to take care of you guys. Mm-hmm. And that's where it came down to. In the meantime, he kind of went back in the back room and chopped everything up to where we received no publishing, we received no writer's royalties or any kind of credit, and on top of that, he copywrote our name, and so we didn't own the name. He also copywrote the name Beautiful Day. He copywrote Lee Michaels' name, which is really strange. But eventually, he went to the point where he put out another band called Moby Grape and put them out there and had them play, and it wasn't us because he owned the name Moby Grape. So it took decades. And Glenn Miskell, who was an attorney out of San Francisco, an entertainment attorney, bless his heart, he went pro bono. And for decades, and in the late 90s, he got our name back. So we got the rights to our name back. But Matthew generated a lot of income from our music, and we didn't see any of it.
Wow. And you'd think it's completely illegal. I know someone who also tried to, basically took everyone's name.com and tried to sell them their own named website back. Much the same. He'd get along good with your ex-manager. So when did you finally walk, or what was the final blow-up with your manager who owned everything?
Well, it was kind of like when it all came out, so that was probably maybe 6 or 7 months into our journey. And so we we said we don't want anything to do with you. And he continued to work on our behalf until we found another manager who was Michael Gruber. And Michael is much better, but nonetheless, they're kind of all the same. It's interesting. You'd think if these guys would have really had somebody's best interest at heart, there was enough to go around for everybody.
Now, I wonder if your story happened before or after the Zombies, because the Zombies were making money in England. Their manager started a new Zombies band in America, and then it took them years to find out that because there was no internet. So they didn't know there were two bands called the Zombies.
No kidding.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that story.
Yeah, so I'm curious if he actually just stole that idea, but maybe he started it and someone stole his idea.
That's interesting, but did you know that, like, when they had all those terrible floods and fires and all that just recently down in Malibu, Matthew's house just burnt down. And probably all of the things that he had stored in there, including masters.
All your masters, right?
You know, I felt like my house burnt down.
You guys were in the UK charts for a while. Speaking of UK, you guys were in the charts for a while.
We were in the
like
charts.
68, yeah.
Yeah. We did a tour of Europe.
Oh, I see. I didn't know that.
Yeah. We did 32 days and 27 tours, 27 gigs.
Whoa.
I didn't know where the hell I was.
Right.
But Edinburgh was interesting. You know, we were doing really well in Great Britain. And when we did play in England, you know, a number of the guys in the band got together with some of the Beatles, and that was awesome. And I happened to be like, I don't know where I was, but I missed that one. But in Edinburgh, when we played in Edinburgh, they had in the proscenium in front of the stage, there was like a little, where the lights are, you know, there's a little kind of a trench, you know, and they would have chain link fence in that trench. And so the theater we played in Edinburgh, if you don't play well, people brought tomatoes and they brought things with them, and if they didn't like the band, they would throw things at the band. And so the guys who who worked backstage, if that was they would just start going like this and bring the chain up so that we played really well in Edinburgh. It was a great concert. Sat up in a big old tub.
I always think those chain fences are for the southern U.S. Apparently, Scotland's got the same idea.
Had the same thing, you know. So it was very intimidating.
Oh man!
And they warned us before we played.
What other countries? Do you have recollections of that tour? I'm sure it was all a big happy wash in your head.
It was pretty much of a wash. I mean, Amsterdam they still would celebrate us 10, 15 years, 20 years after we were there. We had such a great concert in Amsterdam, and we did a lot of radio and a lot of, you know, just media type of things. Mm-hmm. And so we were able to, like, you know, kind of make friends with the people in Amsterdam. And you could go in there, that was back then, you would go into the clubs, we'd go to the nightclub after the gig, and you'd go in and they'd have hashish and they'd have, you know, a nice binkies and all of that going on.
Yeah.
There's another robocall. I think I'm being sued for taxes.
No, I was going to say maybe you're sued because he's listening right now. No, this is a
Matthew would definitely. He's very, very. He litigates a lot.
Right.
So anyway, in Amsterdam, I do recall being there and enjoying their clubs and fans, and I did a radio interview there 20 years after we played.
Wow, cool.
So, yeah.
The Rhythm Dukes, where did that fit in? Your band, the
Rhythm Dukes were down in Santa Cruz, and that was Jerry and Fuzzy John and John Barrett, and Neil Young would come and play once in a while with them, and I played with them for just a very short period of time. That was not really part of my past. I just was there for maybe a month or so, and
so you got a lot of Neil Young, didn't you?
We did.
Yeah.
We had Neil Young on the Ark, and we would, you know, Stephen Stills and Neil Young and Richard Fury and Denny, you know, their drummer.
This early 70s?
This was on the Ark right before we were known. And before,
so
they
late
were
60s.
Yeah. So we'd go over to the houseboats and sit down and jam and play and talk and write songs, and it was a great period of time.
Did you have any idea back then that Neil Young would probably take off, or was he just another one of the guys around?
Just another guy, but the Buffalo Springfield was wonderful, you know. So,
did you know Fraser Mohawk?
I don't know Fraser Mohawk.
Fraser Mohawk probably didn't have that name back then. He's the one who named Buffalo Springfield, looking at some crane, and he basically told the band, you should just call yourself that.
Nice.
Yeah.
So just drive down the street, see a sign, and that's
it. Your band. Nice. There's probably some hash or grass involved in that decision.
There were kind of like two kinds of names of bands back then. There were like really cool names, like the Buffalo Springfield, and then there was like really stupid names, like the old Strawberry Alarm Clock and Moby Grape. So we fell into the
Vanilla
Fudge.
Yeah, there was a lot of good ones.
Really strange names. But we just thought it was a name that people would remember.
And Moby Grape, how did...
That was just a joke.
Yeah.
What's big and purple and swims in the sea? It was Moby Grape. So we had that. Hey, that'll work.
There's the name. You reformed many times. In fact, your Moby Grape kind of had those reunion tours almost as much as the Who had farewell tours. But 1971 with Granite Creek,
right.
Reprise Records. How was going to a new label and coming back after a few years? How was that?
Well, it was actually kind of a second chance. You know, we kind of blown it in a way, but there was still a lot of music to be played and still a lot of things to be said musically. Mm-hmm. And so Reprise said, hey, look, David Rubinson, who did our production, was with the label, and he convinced them to do another album. We were living on a little place down in Santa Cruz called 20 Granite Creek. It used to be a monastery. Mm-hmm. And it was a beautiful old home, and so we turned that into a studio, had a remote truck out front, and we recorded over probably 3 or 4 weeks. We recorded that.
That is a beautiful way to make a record.
It was a great way to make a record.
And really, it feels easy. Like when you hear it, it feels relaxed. And
so we were staying there and cooking breakfast, and had times together. And people would come and people would go. Mosley would pull up in his big red pickup truck with his amp in the back and say, "What the hell's going on?" And Skip would come up from Santa Cruz and stay for a few days, and so it was a very relaxed, very collaborative album, and it still didn't hold together because of the personalities. So the personalities we were all heading in different directions, but the album, we came together for that, and I think that there's a few songs on there that are noteworthy.
Now, I wonder, finally, with your current situation, so you're in Canada, you're doing a show at Hughes Room.
Well, I am, and I'm very excited about it, to tell you the truth. Skippy's son, I thought I turned that off. Skippy's son, who is Omar Spence. And Skippy, as you probably know, is very dynamic, very big personality, great performer, great songwriter. And Skip is kind of cut from his son's, Omar's cut from the same cloth. And he's flying out from California to join us on the 24th of this month at Hughes Room for a night of Moby Grape music. And then I have like Cam McInnes and Timbo Vacanti and Fergus Hamilton and Julie Long and Paul Brennan and Jeff Dunk and great local musicians. So we've been in rehearsal, and it's interesting, like some of these songs still hold up pretty well, and so
love it.
We're going to reproduce some of those songs, and Tim and Fergus are going to open, and so
no doubt you'll be doing 8:05.
We'll be doing 8:05, and Hey Grandma.
Show starts at 8:30 though, not 8:05, but that's okay.
Doors open at 6, so you got plenty of time to have a little bite to eat and a glass of wine, and yeah.
Well, that's going to be a great show. And I'm glad you're here. You're going to stay here? Is this going to be your home for a while?
This is where I'm staying.
Awesome.
I love Toronto.
All right. Thanks, Don.
Hey, my pleasure. Thank you.
Hey. Don Stevenson, Moby Grape. What a storyteller, huh? One more reminder, Sunday the 24th, he's at Hughes Room Live doing the music of Moby Grape with some special guests. Info at hughesroomlive.com. Now, I just found out there's something happening on Sunday over at the MCC. That's the Metropolitan Community Church, 115 Simpson Avenue. It's near Gerrard and Logan. And at 4 p.m. on Sunday, it's a Jazz Vespers show. I love jazz in a church. And who better than George Kohler on bass, Robert Scott on piano, and Genevieve Marentet will sing. 4 p.m., no cover. Put some money in the tip jar and thank me later. It's going to be a beautiful, beautiful show. St. Patrick's Day, tomorrow. This is going to be wild. It's the 41st Annual Martian Awareness Ball. Mary Margaret O'Hara and Marcus O'Hara have been doing this forever, and they've got Rusty McCarthy in the band, backing up a bunch of singers. It's really fun, fairly drunk in the Horseshoe Tavern, and that's 9 p.m., $20 at the door. Very, very simple. And speaking of the Horseshoe, next week my guest is Lenny Stout. He's a great rock journalist. Some would call him a musicologist, but he has no airs about him. He is a down-to-earth, sweet man. Has some health issues right now, so his friends are getting together and banding together and playing a concert for him. And There's the poster. It's going to be fantastic. It's Big Root Jake and Danny Marks and Laura Hubert and so many guest singers. And the Look People, my old band I formed in 1985 right after leaving high school. We're banding together. First time in 23 years we're playing Toronto. And it's two different formations of the band. It's a bunch of the original members getting all together. We used to look like this. Then we looked like this. And now we kind of look like this. So we've got the whole band. Clay Tyson is joining us on an extra guitar. Longo High on guitar. Moved here from Switzerland once he joined the band many years ago. Kevin Hearn, busy with Bare Naked Ladies and his own projects, but he's making time for Lenny Stout. So is Chris Gardner and Great Bob Scott. So we're all going to be there rocking out. And it is $20 at the door. Pay more if you can. It's all going to Lenny Stout, every dime of it. And Lenny Stout is my guest next week. So until then, I will see you soon. Thank you for tuning in for another Jaymz Bee Podcast.